Si son tan amables, las autoridades tomar sus ubicaciones, particularmente quienes se encuentran al final en el pasillo frente a la puerta de cobre. Sí.
¿Quién está ahí en esos tres lugares?
Presidente, vicepresidente, el senador de la Cámara, si es que llegase.
No, se pelean, no van a llegar, ¿no?
Ahí no sabría decir.
Ya. ¿Ah?
No se puede.
Que pongan algo, se corran las manos. Raúl, se llama.
Por favor, si son tan amables, quienes están en el pasillo central. Señoras y señores, hace su ingreso al Salón de Honor del Congreso Nacional Su Excelencia el Presidente de la República, don Gabriel Boric Fon. Pueden tomar asiento, por favor.
Please, have a
Muy buenos
seat.
días, señoras y
Good
señores.
morning.
Bienvenidos a la segunda
Ladies
cumbre
and gentlemen,
parlamentaria contra
welcome
el
to the
hambre.
second
Saludamos a
Parliamentary
las
Summit
autoridades que se
against
encuentran en la
hunger and
testera.
malnutrition. We
Su
greet
Excelencia el
all
Presidente de la
of the
República, don
authorities
Gabriel Boris
in the
Font,
room, and the President of the Republic, Mr. Gabriel Boric Font. The President of the Senate, Senator Juan Andrés Antonio Coloma Correa. To the President of the House of Representatives, Vlado Mirosevich Verdugo.
al subdirector general y
To
representante
the
regional de la
General
Organización
Underdirector
Internacional
and Regional
de la
Representative of the
América Latina y
United
Caribe,
States
don
Entity
Mario Lubetis,
Organization for Food and Agriculture, FAO.
a la senadora integrante del Frente
The
Parlamentario
Senator, member
y la
of the
ministra
Parliamentary Front
señora
Against
Carmen
Hunger and
Gloria
Malnutrition
Aravena,
from Chile, Mrs. Carmen Gloria Aravena.
a la señora presidenta del Frente Parlamentario contra el Hambre,
President of the
Malnutrición,
Parliamentary
Gabriela
Working
Salas,
Group Against Hunger and Malnutrition from Chile,
señoras ministros y subsecretarios presentes,
ministers,
parlamentarias y
undersecretaries here
parlamentarios
present,
chilenos,
parliamentaries of
autoridades
Chile and the
nacionales y regionales
world,
presentes,
national
señoras
and
y
regional
señores.
authorities
A
here
continuación,
present,
invito
ladies and
a
gentlemen.
hacer uso de la palabra
I
al
now
subdirector
invite
general y
to take the
representante
floor
regional de
the
FAO,
General
don Mario
Underdirector,
Lubetskin,
Mr. Mario
quien
Lubetskin
entrega un saludo a nombre de
of
Xu
FAO,
Man-yu, director general
will
de la
be
FAO.
greeting on behalf of Xu Danying of FAO.
Señor presidente de Chile, don Gabriel
Mr.
Boric,
President of
señores
Chile,
presidentes del
Sir
Senado y de
Gabriel
la Cámara
Boric,
de Diputados,
President of the Senate and the
señoras
House of
amigas y señoras
Representatives,
de los frentes parlamentarios del Senado
friends
y de la Cámara de Diputados,
of the
señores
Chamber,
parlamentarios de
Senate,
África, de Asia, de América
parliamentaries
Latina,
from Africa,
del
Asia,
Caribe,
Latin
del
America,
Yemen,
the
que han
Caribbean, Middle
atravesado el
East,
mundo
that
para
have
estar aquí en
crossed the
Santiago y
world to be
transformar,
here
como
in
lo han dicho los
Santiago
medios de
and
comunicación allá,
transform,
en la
to
capital
transform,
mundial de la
as the
batalla
media has
contra el
said,
hambre y la
in the world
malnutrición.
capital
Mi
against
deber,
hunger
como lo
and
han señalado
malnutrition,
anteriormente, leer el
fight
mensaje del director
to read the
general
message
de la FAO,
of the General
que no ha
Director
podido
of
estar
FAO,
con
Shudo
nosotros
Yu,
en este
who
momento,
unfortunately couldn't join
participa en
us
India en
because
la reunión
today
del
is
G20. Leo su
participating at the
pensamiento.
G20 mission in
Hace
India.
5 años los
I will be
parlamentarios
reading
del
his
mundo se
message. 5
reunieron en
years ago, the
Madrid para la primera
parliamentarians of the
cumbre
world met in
internacional
Madrid
sobre
for the first
progreso
summit
supervisar y
in which
evaluar
they committed
el
to
progreso de este
oversee and
trabajo
evaluate the
legislativo
progress
en
of
su
their
lucha contra
legislative
el hambre y
work
la malnutrición.
in their fight
Hoy,
against hunger
en la
and
histórica ciudad
malnutrition.
de
Today,
Valparaíso,
in the
bajo la
historical
hospitalidad
city
y el
of
ataque a la acogida
Valparaiso,
del
with the
gobierno y del pueblo de
hospitality
Chile,
and the warm welcome
nuevamente se
of the
reúnen para
people
reafirmar
of
estos
Chile,
compromisos,
they meet
evaluar
again
nuevas
to
formas de
confirm these
cooperación
commitments and
e
assess
identificar
new paths
soluciones
of
innovadoras
cooperation
para
to
abordar los retos que
assess
ahora
new
más que
innovative
nunca nos
ways
plantea el hambre en el mundo. En los
to
últimos
identify new
años hemos presenciado un
challenges.
aumento
And in the
dramático
past
de
years, we
las
have
cifras de hambre que
identified
han
a
alcanzado los
dramatic increase of
828
hunger
millones de personas.
figures
Una
to
situación
reach
impulsada por
28 million
conflictos,
people, a
amenazas
situation that has been
climáticas,
boosted,
la
driven
pandemia y la
by
desaceleración
climate
económica que han
change,
puesto en
pandemic,
riesgo
and
el desarrollo de las naciones.
several
Por otra
economic
parte, el aumento de los precios de los
deceleration
alimentos al
that have worsened
consumidor han
situations, and
afectado
the
al número de personas que
severe
no pueden
price
acceder a una
consumer
dieta saludable.
the consumer
Estamos
prices
hablando de
have
más de 3
threatened
mil millones de
the
personas en el mundo. La
continuity of a
malnutrición
healthy
infantil es
diet for
particularmente
million people
preocupante.
around the world.
El
Malnutrition
sobrepeso
is
y la
particularly
obesidad son
concerning, and
cada vez más
overweight and
frecuentes,
obesity
en
are
peligros como
becoming
decía
more and
muchos,
more
y aumentan en
frequent
todas las
among children, adolescents, and adults in every region across the world. And the gender gap and the prevalence of food insecurity from moderate to severe has increased even more during the COVID-19 pandemic, affecting disproportionately economic opportunities for women and access to healthy food. All regions of the world, food insecurity continues to be more frequent among women than men. And when facing this scenario and in half of the term of compliance of the 2030 agenda, we've duplicated our efforts in national agendas and particularly around sustainable goals, hunger zero, and the elimination of poverty. All of these goals demand our participation. Friends and everyone from FAO, we acknowledge the key role of legislative processes against hunger and malnutrition. You, as representatives of millions of citizens, have this responsibility of promoting and designing regulations that strengthen policies, promoting a secure, safe place for people, guaranteeing their right to food with programs of sustainable and inclusive food programs. And you play a key role in the design of agro-food programs to make them more efficient, more inclusive, more resilient, and more sustainable. Your contributions represent a robust base for public budgets and to safeguard the proper implementation of public policies. In your participation of the summit, you are showing your commitment and preparation to place food security and nutrition as a priority in the legislative and political agendas, defining the context and the specific needs of your countries. And we are speaking of you, congressmen and congresswomen representing the world in over 100 countries and more, parliament members that are connected in person and remotely following this discussion. This commitment is an important space to make way to other commitments to eliminate hunger and malnutrition, including, among others, measures that you have taken and actions that have been taken as parliamentary dialogues around food security in the times of COVID-19 and the participation of parliament members in the different preparation and contribution spaces in the United Nations food working groups, and the participation of parliament members with G20 countries and meetings around multiple impacts of climate change and economic gaps that lead us to make urgent decisions. You will be the action takers, and you can mobilize society in order to work jointly, promoting citizen participation and listening the requests and demands from the common people. You and FAO are ready to provide technical professional assistance to all the members to support the progress of world goals to eradicate hunger aligned with the local context and with our mandate. To accomplish the four improvements that we have widely discussed: the improvement in production, improvement in nutrition, improvements in environment and life quality are key and are the essence of our current work. Transformation of global food chains will require a strong change in the complementary nature based on intersectoral work to overcome the challenges that are affecting mainly our adolescents, indigenous peoples, women, and the most vulnerable populations, to assure a good future for everyone so that no one is left behind. The motives to I motivate you to acknowledge this beautiful moment that the summit offers and these 2 days of debate that will end tomorrow, that started yesterday at the Latin American and Caribbean level. We have in our hands an agreement to move forward to a fairer and Pacific and thriving world for the future generations. The opportunity of dialogue and collaboration that is given by this space is extraordinary. I invite you to discuss new alliances and exchange new practices and seek innovations, knowledge, and lessons learned that will allow us to respond even more effectively, efficiently, and collectively to the global challenges. I again thank you for your participation and for the generosity and the warm welcome of the government for being the host of this summer. Thank you, Mr. President. I also thank the Parliament working group, parliamentary working group against hunger and malnutrition for being here. I appreciate you for the continuous support and the presence of Spain and Mexico always accompanying us in our efforts. We're living difficult times, that is certain, but working together, we will accomplish the necessary transformation to make food security a reality for everyone. Thank you so much.
Agradecemos las palabras del subdirector general.
We thank the General Underdirector and Regional Representative of FAO, Mario Luetzkin, for his words. Up next, I'll give the floor to someone who wanted to participate in this ceremony, Mr. Gabriel Boric Font, the President of our Republic. Thank you so much, Mario. Welcome, everyone. It is an honor as the Chilean state, as people, joy and something that makes us proud to receive you, to face this challenge that doesn't know any borders, that must move us to the core. If there was one person and hunger, we should be touched, but this is millions of people we are talking about. So this matter that is being discussed and that FAO is supporting with the collaboration of parliament members, exchanging experiences around the world is extremely important. And I deeply thank the organization for choosing our country, Chile, as the host country in order to face this devastating situation. No effort is minor or secondary or less important in seeking food security or a sustainable agriculture as established by the second of the Sustainable Development Goals in the 2030 agenda. We have seen how this agenda is being threatened by war, by wars everywhere. We have seen that in our country and the world. We have seen the impacts in wheat exports, for instance, as a result of the war in Ukraine, conflict with Russia. We are seeing how hunger is lived, and this is also exported, and that leads to migratory effects. We saw in great pain the shipwreck in the coasts of Greece in the Mediterranean Sea, where 80 people passed. Many people were surely suffering from hunger and fleeing their country due to a critical situation. We have seen those situations in Latin America with migration as well, where many people reaching our country tell us that one of the main reasons of fleeing is the difficulty to find food in their own country. That's why they migrate to find better food security for their families. This is a phenomenon that is extremely intertwined with other big challenges that we have as humanity, and that we'll only be able to face act collectively and in solidarity by putting
sobre la
cooperation and
competencia.
collaboration
El ánimo
over
de luchar
competition,
juntos, de salvarnos juntos como
in
humanidad
the spirit of
por
working
sobre
together
el
and saving
beneficio
ourselves
de unos
as
pocos.
humanity over the benefit
Y
of only a
creo
few. And I
que
believe
todos los latinoamericanos estamos
that
orgullosos
all Latin American
que
people will feel proud
se haya sido
that
América Latina y el Caribe la
it's
primera región
is
en
Latin
establecer un
America
frente
and the Caribbean, the
parlamentario
first
regional contra
region
el hambre.
in
Muchas
determining the
gracias a
first
todos
working
quienes
group against
integran estos frentes,
hunger
no solamente en
and
América Latina
malnutrition. Thanks
y
for
el Caribe,
everyone
sino
who's
también en todo
become
el
a part
mundo.
of it, not only from Latin America and the Caribbean,
Como nos
but
decía
from all
Mario,
over the world.
es
As
mucho
Mario was
más que las alianzas
saying, it is
parlamentarias, es
much
mucho
more
más lo que
than
las alianzas
parliamentary
parlamentarias pueden
alliances.
hacer
It goes beyond that
para
parliamentary
poder
alliances
alcanzar el objetivo
can
del hambre
do in
cero,
order to reach the
porque
goal
cada
of
uno de
zero
ustedes
hunger,
puede
because
influir
each
sustantivamente en
and
sus
every one of
gobiernos.
you can
Y
have
el hecho que
a
nos miremos, que conozcamos
tremendous
otras
impact in your
realidades,
governments, and
implica
the
crear
fact that
vínculos
we
también de
know about
afecto,
other
de
realities
cooperación, de comprensión
involve
de lo que está pasando más allá de nuestras
involves
fronteras.
understanding what is
Por
happening beyond our
cierto,
borders.
no necesito explicarles a
And
ustedes que
certainly, I
conocen la
don't need
brutal
to
realidad del hambre y
explain
la
all of
malnutrición en el
you who
mundo,
know the brutal reality
pero
of
sé que sí hay muchas personas que en este
hunger and
momento nos pueden
malnutrition.
estar
I
escuchando
don't need to
o que
explain all of
verán
this to you, but
este
many
foro más
people might be
adelante
hearing
mediante
this
redes
and
sociales,
will
que
see
es
this
necesario
forum in the
que seamos
future
capaces de
on
visibilizar y
social
no
media, and I
naturalizar
need
las
us to be
condiciones
able
y
to
dimensiones
make this
que
visible and
afligieron al hambre
not
en el mundo.
naturalize the
Lo
conditions
decía
that the
Mario,
people are
más de
suffering all around the world.
828
As Mario was
millones
saying,
de
over
personas,
828
millones de personas, seres de carne y
million,
hueso, con historia,
thousand million
con
people
recuerdos, con
are
vida, con futuro, padecen
living
hambre en el
this.
mundo
People with
y esta
lives and
situación
future
además ha
are
empeorado
living this.
dramáticamente desde que
828
COVID hizo su
million
entrada
people are
en el
living
escenario
since
global
living this since
y
COVID
paralelo a
entered
ello o
the
conjunto con ello,
global
consecuencia de ello, se ha
scenario. And
incrementado.
as a consequence of that,
Solo entre
we have seen
2019 y
the economic
2021 el número de
crisis
personas
only
que sufren
between
hambre en el mundo
2019. Since
aumentó en
2019,
150
the
millones de
number of
personas.
people in hunger
En
increased to
América Latina y el Caribe,
150
el hambre y
million
la
people. In
inseguridad
Latin
alimentaria
America and the
también tuvieron
Caribbean,
un pie
hunger
alza.
and food
En estos 2 años referidos
insecurity
entre el
saw an
2019 y el
increase as well. In
2021,
the
la
period
cantidad de
between
personas que sufren
2019 and
hambre pasó de
2021,
43
the number of
millones
people in
a
hunger moved from
56
43
millones.
million to
La inseguridad
56
alimentaria aumentó
million,
en la
and
región
food
en casi
insecurity
100
increased in the
millones de
region in
personas.
almost 100 million people.
Esto al
This,
mismo tiempo en que como
at the
región somos
same
responsables del
time,
13% de la producción mundial de
when
bienes
as a
agrícolas,
region, we
más
are
del
the
17% de las
responsible region
exportaciones mundiales en el mundo.
for being the
Exportamos
70% of the
algo menos de la
world's
mitad de nuestra
export in
producción agrícola,
agriculture. We have
del orden del
doubled our
41%
agricultural production in
aproximadamente.
41%
Tenemos un superávit
approximately,
agroalimentario
and
anual
we
de casi
have a
174
surplus of
mil
almost
millones de dólares,
74,000
lo que
million
equivale a
dollars,
265 dólares por
70,
habitante, y
$174
aún así,
billion dollars,
más
which
de
is
56 millones de latinoamericanos
over,
sufren de hambre. Esta es
which
la tremenda
still
dimensión
doesn't
del futuro
compensate
del que
for
estoy
this
seguro
millions of people
cada uno de los
suffering from
representantes de las
hunger
distintas regiones
that
podrá contar
involves
las propias experiencias.
all of our work. And I'm
En nuestro
sure you
país,
can
Chile,
tell your experiences. In
tenemos
Chile,
hoy
our
día,
country,
gracias
we,
al trabajo
thanks to the
del
work
Estado, pero
of
por sobre
the
todo
state, but
de la colaboración
above all,
público-privada y de los
thanks to the
campesinos y
public and
campesinas,
private collaboration, and
de las
thanks to the
industrias
work
vinculadas al
of
agro,
the
un sistema alimentario
farmers and
robusto
the agro industry and
por
a
nuestra tradición agrícola
robust
campesina y a nuestro
agricultural
clima
system and
diverso
our
que permite
tradition
contar con una amplia variedad de
of
frutas y hortalizas
agricultural
durante todo el
farming, and
año.
then that
Es muy
allows us to
impresionante
have
recorrer los mercados
food
regionales.
security
Pienso, por ejemplo, en el mercado de Arica, de donde viene
all
el presidente
year
de la Cámara de
round.
Diputados,
And
quien
Arica, where the
donde uno se
president of the
sorprende,
chamber comes from,
pese a estar
you
cerca
can
del
be
desierto, de la
surprised
variedad
because
de
despite it's
colores,
close to the
la
desert,
fiesta de
with the
colores
variety
de esos
of and
mercados regionales.
the joy that
Pienso en
the
el Maule, donde
palette
viene
of
el presidente
colors
de la Cámara del Senado,
you can
en donde
see,
también uno
there's a
recorre los
lack
intersticios de la
of
región y encuentra en
variety
cada uno
in food,
especificidades
and
y
you can
historias
find
tradiciones
in every
campesinas.
region different
Acá,
specificity and
en el
different
interior de la quinta región,
traditions. And
donde
in
viene nuestra diputada
the
Marzán,
fifth region, from where
donde
our
la sequía ha
representative
golpeado
Marsan comes
duro
from, where the
a las
drought has
familias, a
hit
los campesinos,
hard
y
for
pese a ello
families
buscan
and
maneras de seguir
farmers, and
adelante.
despite that,
O
they
en
are
la
all
Araucanía, de
looking
donde
for the
proviene
ways to move
el senador
on.
Aravena,
And or
en
from
donde
Araucanía, where
dificultades de un conflicto
our
histórico han también
Representative
golpeado
Aravena comes
nuestra
from,
producción
the historical
de
conflicts
alimentos
have fit
y
the
hoy día estamos
production of food,
conjuntamente
and today we
buscando
are
maneras de solucionarlo.
jointly trying to find solutions
Como les
for that.
decía, Chile cuenta con
As I
un
said,
sistema alimentario
Chile
robusto,
has a
pero no
robust
podemos
food
estar tranquilos, porque en nuestro
system, but
país
we
hay
cannot
hambre, hay pobreza,
stay at ease because
menos que
there is
antes,
still hunger and poverty.
pero
Sure,
sigue
it is
existiendo y tiene que
less
seguir
than in the
conmoviendo.
past, but it is still there,
Y esta
and we
afecta
should
principalmente a los
still be
niños,
moved by it.
a
This
las
affects
niñas y a los
mainly
adolescentes.
children and
Y hoy, y
adolescents.
esto es tremendamente preocupante, más de la mitad
Today,
de los niños
which
de
is
nuestro
deeply
país
concerning,
sufren algún
over
tipo
half of
de
the children in our
malnutrición
country
por
is suffering
exceso o
from
mala
some
alimentación.
type of malnutrition due
Y
to
esto tiene su
excess
raíz
or
en las profundas
undernutrition.
desigualdades que
And
tenemos
this is
y la dificultad que
deeply
enfrentan las familias
rooted
de
in
menos
the
ingresos para acceder a
inequalities
una
that we live
alimentación
and the difficulties
saludable,
that families
que
that are
es
more vulnerable
5
have
veces
to
más
have
cara
access to a more
que
healthy
aquella
nutrition that
que
is
solo
5 times more
satisface
expensive
en calorías.
than that nutrition that only
Por
satisfy
eso,
in number of
como
calories.
gobierno hemos
That
dado
is
pasos
why,
para
as
avanzar
government, we
en la
have taken
universalidad del
steps
programa de alimentación escolar,
towards the
porque nos
universality
parece
nature
que no
of
es
the school
tolerable
food program,
que en
because we believe
establecimientos de alta
it's
vulnerabilidad
unacceptable
social
that in establishments of
hayan programas de
high
alimentación que no cubran a
social
todos los
vulnerability,
estudiantes,
there are food programs that do
porque eso
not
significa
include all
el
students, because
absurdo
that
de
means
que
the
dos personas, dos
absurd,
niños,
the
están
absurdity
sentados
that
juntos en una misma sala con
two
condiciones
children
muy
that are sitting
parecidas.
together
Uno tiene
in
acceso
very
a
similar
alimentación de
conditions in
calidad
a
y el
room,
otro
in a
no.
classroom.
Y eso no podemos
One of
permitirlo.
those has access to
Hemos comenzado con
quality
kinder y nuestro objetivo
nutrition
es
and
seguir
one
avanzando
doesn't.
hacia todos
We
los
have
estudiantes que lo
moved
necesiten
forward in
puedan
that aspect.
optar y
We
ejercer
have
con su derecho a una alimentación
secured that
saludable.
for the
Además,
kindergarten
recientemente
level,
hemos
but
lanzado
we
la
are
Estrategia Nacional de
trying to include
Soberanía para la
more.
Seguridad
We have
Alimentaria, que fue
one
construida con la
on
participación de
food
amplios sectores
security
de nuestra sociedad y
sovereignty
que busca
programs
generar las condiciones para
for more
reducir la
sectors
malnutrición.
of the
Y en
nation
esto son
for
fundamentales
improving the conditions of
la colaboración
malnutrition. And for
público-privada,
this, it
en
is
particular quiero destacar la
fundamental to have
agricultura
more
familiar
public and
campesina.
private
Y
collaboration
cuando hablamos de
and
agricultura
the
familiar campesina, tenemos que
family
pensar también
farming
en
culture. And when
cómo
we
cuidamos
speak of
nuestra
this kind
ruralidad,
of agriculture, we need to think of how to take care
cómo
of our
cuidamos y protegemos
rural
la vida en el campo,
culture, how we
sus
take care
tradiciones y su
of
cultura.
our life in
Y por
the
un
countryside
momento
and
detengámonos a
its
pensar en
future.
esta obsesión que
For
como
a
civilización
moment, we should
pareciéramos tener
stop
por
and
las ciudades
considering this obsession that we have
y la calidad de
apparently for
vida.
living in big cities and
Y
the
ahí
life
nuevamente hay
quality.
muchos temas adyacentes.
Again, there are
Fortalecer la educación
many
rural es
adjacent and
fundamental
potential
para
topics,
que
and
los jóvenes
it
del
is
campo,
key to have
las y los jóvenes del
education
campo
so
no
that
sientan la
people in the
obligación de
countryside,
tener que
adolescents,
emigrar,
and
un destierro
the youth
forzado
does not feel
de donde
pressure
fueron
to
formadas sus familias
emigrate
porque no hay las
from their
condiciones o
place of
oportunidades
birth
o la construcción
and
de
to move
viviendas
away from their
en los sectores
families,
rurales. Muchas
or
veces
because they do
desde
not
los gobiernos
have the
centrales,
proper
en este
housing. Many
caso
times
nosotros
from the central
tenemos
government
la
level,
sede del gobierno en Santiago
we, in this case, have
y
the
yo cuando
central
voy a
uh,
lugares rurales
house
de Chile
offices of the
recorro nuestro
government
país,
in Santiago, and when I
siempre
go
pienso que
to
esa realidad no se
remote
ve
places of Chile, I
desde
always
la
think
moneda,
that you don't
no se
see
ve
that
muchas veces desde el
reality
gobierno
from
central y por
the
eso también es tan
presidential
importante
palace,
los
from the
parlamentarios y
central offices
parlamentarias
of the
porque ustedes
government, and that
representan ese
is
campo vivo.
why your work as
Y
parliament
para poder
members is
protegerlo, para poder
so
tener soberanía alimentaria, para
quintessential,
poder
because
proteger
in
la
order to
agricultura familiar
have food
campesina, tenemos que
security and to
vincularlo con una
protect the
serie de
family
políticas
agriculture,
públicas
we
en
need to
otros temas.
link it to a series of public
El
policies in
cuidado del
other
agua,
areas and the reality that is lived elsewhere, and the care
por
for
eso
water, for instance.
nuestro
And
país ha tomado
that
la
is the
decisión de asumir
reason
la
our
tarea de
country has
asegurar a su población
made
alimentos
the decision
saludables,
of
inocuos y de manera
securing
oportuna. Y hemos decidido
healthy
hacerlo de manera
food in
unitaria,
a timely
como un
fashion for
compromiso de
all its
todas y de
people
todos,
in
como demuestra
unity,
también
and
la
as a
diversidad de los
commitment of
parlamentarios que
everyone,
participan en
as
esta
it is
decisión.
shown by the
Para lograr
commitment of
esto,
parliament
ya voy
members
terminando, se
here. To
requiere
prove this,
buena
and
política,
as I
una política
finish,
que
we
busque grandes
demand,
acuerdos que permitan generar
we
las
require to
condiciones
have good
para
policies
avanzar
and
en modelos de
agreements
desarrollo
to
más sustentables,
set the
equitativo y, por
conditions
cierto,
to move
contar con
to a
recursos que
more sustainable
posibiliten
development, and to
que el
have the
Estado pueda
resources that
cumplir
will
con su
enable that
obligación de
the state can
garantizar el
accomplish with
derecho a
its
alimentación a todas las personas.
mission to guarantee nutrition for all
Estimados y
people.
estimadas parlamentarias presentes,
Dear parliament
nuestro
members
país pone
in this
a vuestra
room
disposición
and present
y a
here,
disposición de este
our
encuentro
state
nuestra
is
experiencia y
making
trabajo como
available
Poder
for this
Ejecutivo,
meeting our
nuestra experiencia
experience and
legislativa,
our
la
work, our
historia de
legislative
nuestros
experience
parlamentarios,
and
de
our
nuestros
executive
campesinos, la
experience, the
historia
experience
agraria de Chile, de nuestros
of our
gremios,
agriculture
nuestros pescadores, de nuestras mujeres de mar,
industry,
de
our
nuestros elaboradores,
fishing
procesadores y
industry,
transformadores de
our
alimentos para encontrar
food
distintas soluciones a
processors,
este fenómeno.
or
Chile los
everyone
recibe con
to
las manos
face
abiertas,
this
llenos
situation
de esperanza
together,
de que un mundo sin hambre
this
y con
courage
la semilla de la paz
together
global
to
es
have the
posible.
world without
Bienvenidas y
hunger. It
bienvenidos y
is
muchísimas gracias por
possible
estar
to
con
have a
nosotros.
world without hunger. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
You did it, bitch.
Agradecemos la presencia y las palabras de Su Excelencia el Presidente de la
I would like to
República,
thank the
don Gabriel
words of our
Boric Font,
president
que
and His
debido a su
Excellent
agenda
President Gabriel
del día
Boric
muy
Font,
apretado,
who
nos va a
will
dejar hasta
have to
esta
leave
noche.
us
Gracias
because
de
of his
contexto.
tight
Así
agenda.
que, presidente,
So, Mr. President,
voy a redondear.
I will have to
Sigue.
wrap
Entonces,
up.
le damos a continuación,
Oh no, he
la
will
palabra
continue with us
a la presidenta
for
del Frente Parlamentario
a
contra
little
el
while.
Hambre y la
So
Desnutrición, diputada
now we will
Carolina
give the
Marzán.
word to Deputy Carolina Marzán.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Un honor para nosotros,
It's an honor for
presidente, que nos
us
acompañe y que nos siga acompañando.
to have the
Creo que usted
president
menciona
here and to
realmente
continue to have
y
to
cómo
have him
palpita hoy día
here.
nuestro corazón,
You know
íntegramente con todo
how our
esto.
hearts are
Se agradece
beating
infinitamente.
since
Dado
we
nuestra
can
presencia
have
en
him
Cámara, disculpe si
here,
me desordeno el protocolo,
Mr. President. I'm
senadores,
sorry if I get
senador
distracted from the
Mario,
protocol,
querida
Mr.
senadora.
President of the Senate, dear senators, representatives, everyone present. As the president of the Parliamentary Front Against Hunger and Malnutrition of the country, I would like to start with two questions. Did you know that over 5,000 kilometers away from this place in the Dominican Republic, a few months ago, the baby 8 billion was born? Did you know that every day in the country, 8,500 children die because of malnutrition? And finally, I wanted to ask you, did you know that in Chile the pandemic hit harder on women than on men when it comes to food security? Three questions that put us in the move and to question and to make urgent our legislative work, because while we're here in this space, around the world there's one person out of food, or a person that was one day or more than one day without having any bite of food. And that is terrible. And it's becoming more and more severe. And with women, it's even worse. Why do I bring women up? In order to create conscience that women are the ones that feed the world. Women move to feed communities and their own families, forgetting about even their own food intake. So I'm calling on you so this work is never naturalized. Does not become normal or ignored, as it has happened to the women who are here, who may be lifted, or your mothers or grandmothers, the elders of the tribe, dear representatives of the world and our country. Today, in a far corner of South America, we have a huge opportunity with which you can change the lives of millions and millions of people. Dear President, since you're here present inaugurating the summit, and since we are here hosting, being this chamber who will shape and welcome the public policies in order to eradicate hunger and malnutrition, our country becomes a leader working to break the gender gaps, to support agriculture in the countryside, and everything you have communicated us today. And with this, we know that we can count on you. And we also know that we can count with the president of both chambers to make urgent all the projects that need to be. So I would like to invite you to remove our roots, to take our shoes off and step on the ground, to listen to ourselves again, to look at each other again, to smell each other, to feel the scent of each other, to look into the future of every nation with the room, with the thought that every girl, mother, and grandmother have had in the same way they've had to do it. So everything we agree here comes to life, and by the end of the day, we can say we made it. Thank you very much. Thank you for the words of the Representative Carolina Marzán. Now, we welcome to the podium Carmen Gloria Aravena, Senator. Thank you very much. I would like to greet our president in the first place and thank the time he's providing this. And I'm sure before the food crisis around the world, it wasn't important, but currently is a very relevant matter worldwide. The president of both chambers, and Carolina, the president of the chamber, and Mario Lubetic. But I want to thank our Argentinian brother representing Argentina in this summit. Last years have been very complex with COVID, the war between Russia and Ukraine, inflation that has hit hard on food around the world, especially in Latin America. But my opinion is that crises help to face problems that we never look at. Chile is an agricultural country, and the people who are here, most of us come from small agricultural areas. So it was not a subject we talked about, but sometimes it's been an urgency for both chambers and the agricultural production because there were other problems more important. Today, it is relevant. It is important, the logistics, how to incorporate sustainability, climate change. Today, it is a concern, and I'm very happy that it is that way. So I think it's extraordinary that we can become the hosts of to face this problem. So I'm very glad to be able to serve this 828 million people who are expecting results and solutions for the problem they're facing that has nothing to do with dignity, technology, legislation, appropriate legislation that will allow us to move on with this subject. Women and small agriculture are key in this subject. For those of us who come from the countryside, we know women have a very special role when it comes to food. Of course, sometimes they're not visible, and sustainable agriculture is the future. And when we talk about water, and we have the agricultural ministry here, he knows we're changing the water legislation so it's easier for women, indigenous peoples, and those in charge of small agriculture to produce food. In Latin America and the Caribbean, we produce food, and a lot of it, but we don't have good indexes of nutrition and food within our family. So something's failing. God gave us a beautiful world, very rich, but something has not been right. for us to have so
De
many
una u
people in
otra
the
manera, la
world lacking
globalización
food.
hizo que
In
tuviéramos
one way or
muchos,
another,
oportunidades de
globalization
comercio
made us
exterior.
have a lot of
También
opportunities of
creo que a
external
partir de toda la
commerce.
crisis que hemos
However,
vivido nos hemos
I
dado
think
cuenta
from all
que
the
no solo,
crises we have
no es
lived,
importante
we have
exportar,
realized
sino
that
también
it's not only
asegurar
important
una
to
calidad de
export, but
alimentación
also to
adecuada
ensure
para
a good
nuestros pueblos
quality of
habitantes en cada uno
food
de los
for
países que
our own
proyectan los
inhabitants in
resultados.
each of the countries
Bienvenidos
who
a
are
Chile, este
represented
pequeño
here.
país
Welcome to
del
Chile,
último
this
lugar del
small
mundo que
country
tiene una
in the
diversidad
last place
en
of the
suelos
world
que
with
prácticamente
a
11 de los 12
huge
suelos agrícolas
diversity
del
of
mundo están acá.
soils. We have
Somos un país
11 of the
rico
12.
muchísimo en
So
minería,
we
en
are a
agricultura, en
very
agua,
rich
en
country when it
paisaje,
comes to
pero
water,
necesitamos
landscapes,
cooperar
mining,
con ustedes, pero
agriculture,
también
but
poder
we
captar
need
las mejores
to
ideas y los
cooperate
mejores
with you
recursos
and to get the best ideas and
intelectuales,
resources,
sociales y muchas
intellectual,
experiencias que ustedes
social
hoy día nos van a
resources,
contar
and the
a partir
experiences
de
you're going to
este
share with
foro
us
que va a
today
durar 2 días.
from this
Sinceramente
summit
creo
that will
que
last 2
esta
days. I
es una
honestly
actividad
think
alimentar al mundo en todas las áreas,
that
agricultura, pesca y
feeding the
otros,
world in
es
all
probablemente
areas,
la actividad
fishing,
más noble que hace
agriculture,
el ser humano.
is one
Por
of the
lo
most
tanto, para mí es un
noble
honor,
tasks of the
sinceramente, poder
human being. So
representar
for
con
me,
estas
it's an
breves
honor to
palabras
be able to
al Senado
represent
y a los
with these few
parlamentarios que hoy día
words the
estamos
Senate
preocupados de esto,
and the
pero hoy día la invitación
representatives
es a
in charge
ocuparnos
of this
porque el
today.
mundo nos
So today,
necesita.
I'm
Muchas gracias.
inviting you to take care of this because the world needs us. Thank you very much.
Agradecemos las palabras de la senadora
We would like to thank the words of
del Frente
the
Parlamentario contra el
Senator
Hambre y la Desnutrición, señora Carmen Gloria Aravena.
Carmen
Corresponde
Gloria
hacer uso de la
Aravena.
palabra e invitamos al presidente de
Now,
la Cámara de Diputadas y
the
Diputados de Chile,
president
diputado Vlado
of the
Milosevich.
Chamber of Deputies, Vlado Milosevich, will take the floor. Good morning, everyone, Mr. President, President of the Senate, President of the Front Against Hunger and Malnutrition of the Senate. I see several friends, the President of Bolivia, President Mercado, the President of Honduras, the President of the Congress of Honduras, several friends. I will not greet everyone, but Chile is a small country, but with a long democratic tradition and a long poetic tradition. You know, we have two Nobel Prizes, and both Gabriela Mistral and Pablo Neruda are not exactly in origin from wealthy families. They come from poor families, and they both come from rural areas. Neruda in Parral and Gabriela Mistral from Vicuña, both towns from the country and the desert of Chile, and they both got to be Nobel Prizes. So what has us here today together, of course, has to connect us to something you cannot stop doing. You cannot leave Chile without reading Neruda or Gabriela Mistral. It's full of their books in our bookstores. So the story of them is related to what we're discussing today, because probably they would be part of this 800 million in the world suffering from hunger, or even more million who are in the food insecurity, who are suffering from food insecurity. So we wonder about freedom. How is it possible that a person develops their own life project without having covered the most basic needs to do so? If we do not combat inequality, this becomes a huge hypothesis for the masses, and freedom cannot be executed and if we don't have all this covered. So we're not just talking about freedom, and we're not talking about equality, we're talking about freedom for the masses. We're discussing about the climate collapse. Statistics show between 21 and 37% of the greenhouse gases are because of the alimentary system, food system. It's because of the food system. 40%. The climate collapse is related to food. So in Chile, we are promoting laws about related to waste, the waste of food. We're looking for the chamber and the Senate to approve this, to make this a reality. The goal of zero hunger is further than yesterday. The ODS goal is further than yesterday after the pandemic. the
En el siglo
SDGs.
XX nos dividimos entre
In the 20th century, we
algunos que
divided
estaban ilusionados con las soluciones del mercado y
between
otros
those
que estaban
who are
ilusionados con las
hopeful about
soluciones
the
del Estado.
solutions of the market and others
Pero
with the solutions
probablemente
of
si
the
hay
state.
algo que ha demostrado
But
todo
probably
esto es
if
que las
there is
desigualdades no
something
se
that
van a
all
combatir
of this
solo
has
desde el
proved
mercado
is
ni
that
solo desde el
inequality is
Estado.
not covered
Yo los
from just one of
invitaría
the
a que
sides. I would
abandonemos
invite you
nuestros dogmas
to
y
leave
entendamos que
our own
probablemente
dogmas and understand that
un
maybe
pacto social civilizatorio requiere de
a
ambas cosas.
social
La prosperidad
civilizatory
común
pact involves
requiere
both.
de Estado y
Common
requiere de mercado.
prosperity involves market and
Ese viejo
state.
dogma hay que dejarlo en el siglo XX
That
y avanzar
old
hacia
dogma
lo
has to
único
be
que nos
left
puede
in the
ofrecer
20th
prosperidad
century, and you have to
la
move on
combinación
to the
entre
only
libertad y
thing
igualdad.
that
No
can
hay otra
offer prosperity,
manera.
the combination of state and
No hay
market.
otra.
There's no other way.
Por lo tanto, llegar a hambre cero
So
significa
reaching
buscar esa
zero
buena
hunger
combinación.
means to look for
Bienvenidos
that
a
good
Chile, no se
combination.
vayan sin leer a
Welcome
los
to
poetas.
Chile.
Un
Read
abrazo
our
grande
poets.
y gracias a
Huge
Carolina
hug for
Marzán
every
por
single
el
one of you,
tremendo
and
trabajo
thank you,
que ha hecho.
Carolina Marzan, for
Una
the
chilena
huge
que se
work she's
empeñó
been
que este
doing.
encuentro se
A
realizara
Chilean
acá.
woman
Gracias también a la
who
cooperación
fought
española,
to
gracias a
have
la
the
cooperación
summit
mexicana,
occur here. Thank
gracias a la
you
FAO,
for the
Mario, por el tremendo trabajo que hace.
collaboration from
Eso, un
Spain,
abrazo
Mexico,
grande
and for
a todos
FAO
y a
for
todas.
your work. Greetings, everyone.
Agradecemos la palabra del presidente de la Cámara de Diputadas y Diputados.
We thank the words of the President of the House of Representatives, and we would like to welcome now Juan Antonio Coloma to use the podium.
Muy buenos días. Un saludo especial al presidente de la República, don Gabriel Boric.
I would like to greet the President of the Republic, Gabriel Boric, also the President of the Chamber of Representatives, Vladimir Mirosevic. We have shared some time. Senator Aravena, who has collaborated in this scenario, and the Congresswoman Marzan, who has been a driver when it comes to this subject. The representative of FAO, who is from Uruguay, not Argentina. First of all, I would like to welcome in this hall, in this room, many of you have told me that is very pretty, and it has a lot of Republican history. Very important agreements have been reached in this room, which is a symbol of democracy. And then this honor hall would like to welcome all the representatives coming from different areas of the world. I would like to greet Chilean representatives as well who are here present. And the idea here, of course, is to coordinate a work to face one of the scourges, one of the most dramatic scourges in the world related to hunger and malnutrition in the world. So the calling here is to work, because the data cannot leave us unbothered. We're talking about over 800 million people, human beings, men, children, and women in hunger. And there are 46 million more than in 2020 and 56 million more than before the pandemic. So you think, well, maybe something is happening in society, in the society we share, in the latitudes and longitudes that bring us near and so far away at the same time, that we have to face differently. It cannot be that 7.5 million of children in the world suffer some kind of malnutrition. It cannot be that having the capacities to face this problem, today the numbers show us and hurt us saying that these needs are not being met. That's why the summit is so relevant. And along history, you can see that hunger has been living with humans. It's been part of the history of 50 centuries. But 50 centuries in which we didn't have the capability of facing the hunger conditions or a culture, a development to understand why this was happening. And that, of course, has changed in the world. 2020 already gave us other answers, of course, related to imagination of humans and how to produce food, which was thought to be impossible. And then it was not a material, physical matter, it was a political matter. And hunger was used in action as a way of action. I am part of the youth that grew with the drama of Diafra. When you looked at scenes that broke our souls, and it was used as a way of political coercion, and that is a world that was divided for a century between wars, and we have a different, the opposite line right now. So in the 21st century, it's not a physical or material matter. There's no space for political division. It's ethical and cultural. And that's what Congresses and presidential leaderships should be in charge of. How ethically we understand that having, because we can do it in this century, we can actually create a situation where we have no hunger in the world. It's not that we cannot do it. Probably 1,000 years ago, we were not able to do it, but we are able to do this now. And right now, you just have to look at ChatGPT. Culturally, we can execute many actions that will allow us to understand and learn. That's why we need congresses and summits to be decisive. We need to listen to each other and do not lose grasp of our tasks, not only to bring attention to it or to have a diagnosis, but to learn how to face these issues and to get a vision, a different vision. And it's important to listen to each other for that and to understand what has been successful and what has not been successful. We have tried different ways, and some have had, and they have had different results. But we need to learn from the successful ones. We have had discussions with the president about the labeling law, for example. You think that when you know what you're intaking, you're gonna pay attention to your nurturing, and maybe that's a different, that works for other countries. Now we're talking about waste. I have heard experiences from other countries, and they have done very intelligent things when it comes to the use of water, distribution, other ways of facing the same problems that can help us to be actors, pivot, access of these changes that will allow us to face new way. That is the invitation. So we welcome you with an open mind, an open heart, and with a great attitude in order to meet the needs that we're presented with. So that's what we're going to be doing for these 2 days. So I would like to invite you not only to read, as the president of the chamber said, because poetry helps us reflect. So I would invite you to reflect, to feel this, to believe that we are the main characters, not only commenters of it, but actors of the future. And we have a great opportunity right now. As beside FAO and the different congresses, the effort of the presidents here present, and to finally say there's a before and after, because we have the moral obligation that no child, no adult, no woman will not have something to eat on a day, and that culturally we can face malnutrition with the talent and freedoms and responsibility that it means in the world we live in. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente del Senado, por sus palabras. Ahora sí, presidente.
Thank you for your kind words, President of the Senate. And now we are going to take a few seconds while the President of the Republic leaves the room to continue with his agenda. So we'll take 30 seconds.
Bueno, para continuar con la actividad de este
In order to
evento,
resume
quisiera
our
invitar a don
activities,
Antón
I would
Leis,
like to
director de
invite
la
Mr.
Agencia Española
Anton
de
Lacing,
Cooperación
Director
Internacional
of
para
the
el
Spanish
Desarrollo,
Agency
quien
of
nos entregará
International
sus palabras
Cooperation
de
for
bienvenida.
Development, who will give us his welcoming remarks.
Distinguidas señorías, parlamentarios y parlamentarias, delegados y
Dear
delegadas
Parliament
de los
members,
distintos gobiernos
delegates
nacionales y
of the
regionales,
different
así como de
regional and national
organismos
governments
multilaterales,
and
queridos
multilateral
colegas, hermanos
entities,
chilenos,
and dear
estimados
colleagues
participantes, amigos y
and Chilean
amigas.
friends,
Como
participants,
representante de España y director de la
and
Agencia
everyone
Española de
as
Cooperación
the
Internacional para el
representative of
Desarrollo, es
Spain
para
and
mí un honor
director
y un
of the
privilegio poder coincidir con
International
ustedes
Cooperation
en
Spanish
esta
Agency.
segunda
It is
cumbre mundial a la que
develop,
asistimos con altas
it's an
expectativas.
honor, a
Y es que
privilege
asistimos con el
to
convencimiento
address
de que
you in this
logrando
second
acuerdos y actuando
World
conjuntamente
Summit
vamos
with
a
high
poder combatir
expectations,
juntos y
and
juntas
I am
los
certain that
desafíos
we'll be
globales
able to
y
fight
acelerar el
together the
cumplimiento de los
global
objetivos de
challenges and
desarrollo sostenible
accelerate
y en
the
concreto del objetivo número 2.
compliance with the
Señorías, no
SDGs
vamos
and
bien. Al ritmo
accelerate
actual, en
number
2030
two.
habrá alrededor de 600 millones de pobres
We,
y 770
despite
millones de
are
personas
not
con hambre.
going
Nos va a
to
llevar al
the
ritmo
current
actual
rate by
286 años,
2030 will take
2,86,
us,
resolver las brechas de género.
it would
La
take us
COVID-19 primero y las consecuencias
670,000
globales de la guerra de agresión de Rusia contra
people
Ucrania,
with
de todas las guerras que
hunger
sabemos que son la principal
would
causa
take
de
us
hambre en el mundo, no nos lo están
286
poniendo ni
years
fácil. Y es
to
para nosotros, para el Gobierno de España,
solve.
un orgullo
Well,
formar
now
parte de esta
it'll take us
iniciativa
something
para
differently, but it
revertir
is
estas
something
tendencias.
that makes us
Estamos
very
firmemente
proud in
comprometidos
Spain to revert
con un
this
futuro en el que nadie pase
these
hambre y en el
trends,
que
and
todos
we
nuestros
are committed
ciudadanos
to
y
a future
ciudadanas
where no
puedan
one is
ejercer un
in
derecho
hunger
tan
and where
básico
all
como
citizens
el
can
derecho a la alimentación
exert,
adecuada y nutritiva.
exercise the right
El hambre y la
to a proper
malnutrición no
nutrition.
son
Hunger and
desafíos que
malnutrition
se deban o que se
are
puedan
not
abordar únicamente con
challenges that
soluciones técnicas.
can and should
Son,
be addressed
sobre
with
todo y ante
technical
todo,
solutions,
problemas políticos
particularly
de primer nivel que requieren de
these are
políticas públicas y
political
de
issues
soluciones
of high
sistémicas. De ahí
level
la
that
importancia de
require
esta reunión y
systemic
de
and political
trabajar
solutions.
con
That is
ustedes
why
como
this
representantes de las
this meeting
soberanías
is
de
so
sus
important,
países.
and
Quisiera
it
hoy
is
destacar y
also the
celebrar el
work with
trabajo
you.
realizado por los frentes
And I would
parlamentarios
like
contra
to
el hambre de
highlight the
América Latina y
work done
Caribe,
by the
querida
representatives
diputada,
of the
así como los del
Parliamentary Front
Observatorio del
Against
Derecho a la
Hunger
Alimentación de
and
América Latina y
Malnutrition,
Caribe. Ellos
and
nos han marcado el
also
camino. Ellos han sido el
the
modelo y referente
FAO
indudable.
and the
Modelo que ha servido
region
también
in
para
Latin
que
America
en
and
mi
the
país, en
Caribbean
España,
representatives. They
se haya
have been the
creado una
model,
alianza
and they have
parlamentaria por el
led
derecho a la
that
alimentación y un
us in Spain
observatorio
have
por el derecho a
created
la
an
alimentación en España.
observatory for
Ambos
the
a
right of
imagen y
food
semejanza
in
de sus homólogos
nutrition in
latinoamericanos.
Spain
Y
and
eso es
following
lo que
its
llamamos
peers
y
in
lo que
Latin
tanto nos
America.
gusta,
That
una
is
cooperación de ida y
why
vuelta, en donde
we
todo el
like
mundo
it so
aprende y
much
en
to
este
have
caso,
this
digamos, un país del
cooperation. That
norte
is
como España
why we are
aprendemos del sur
learning.
global. Un
In
fenómeno
this case,
enriquecedor
we
y
are learning from
significativo
the
en
global
nuestras
south,
relaciones de intercambio, de
rich
cooperación
phenomenon
y de
of,
amistad entre países y regiones.
an
España ha
example
apoyado el
of
fortalecimiento de estos
this
frentes
cooperation
parlamentarios en
between the
América Latina y
regions.
Caribe
Spain
financieramente y
has
políticamente desde 2009.
been
Hemos sido
supporting
socios
since
también desde el año
2009. We have
2005
been
de la
partners since
iniciativa,
2005
en el
from
mismo año
the
en el que se asume el compromiso
initiative, in the
político de la
same year that the
erradicación total del
political
hambre
commitment
y el
was
alcance de la
undertaken
seguridad
for
alimentaria
the
y
poverty
nutricional para el año
eradication and
2025
to
a
reach
través de la iniciativa América
hunger
Latina y Caribe
eradication by
sin hambre,
2025
de la mano
through
de
the
nuestros buenos amigos de la FAO.
America Sin Hunger
Y fue en
initiative,
Madrid
and
donde se organizó en
aligned
2018
with
la
our
primera
good
cumbre
friends at FAO.
mundial
And during
parlamentaria contra el hambre y la
2018,
malnutrición,
during the
con
first
excelentes
Parliamentary Summit
resultados. Esa
against hunger and
declaración de Madrid,
malnutrition, we
adoptada por consenso,
defined
supone un
good
hito como acuerdo entre legisladores
results,
de todo
and
el mundo por una
the
causa común
first
y el reconocimiento de que nuestros sistemas
meetings
alimentarios
towards
no
a
están
common goal,
interconectados.
and a recognition that our
5 años
systems are
después de la
connected.
primera
And
cumbre,
five
ni
years
siquiera la
later,
COVID
after the
ha
first
podido
summit, not even
detener este
COVID
impulso, puesto que
was
estos
able
diálogos
to stop
parlamentarios han
this
continuado, ustedes han
drive,
continuado
this
trabajando de manera
this
virtual.
momentum, because
Y
all
a
of
ello
you
vamos
have
a seguir
continued to
dedicando
work
nuestros
remotely
empeños
and will
para que tras esta
continue
cumbre, esta
making
segunda cumbre, salgamos más
efforts so
fortalecidos
that
y
after the
dispuestos a
second
contribuir
summit will
a
be
esa
more
aceleración para lograr los
robust
objetivos de
to
desarrollo sostenible, sobre
continue
todo el hambre
accelerating
cero.
the development of the
Ustedes como
sustainable
parlamentarios
development
tienen
goals, and you as
sí,
parliament
ante sus
members
manos ese inmenso
have
reto
before
como es
you
la
that
elaboración de
tremendous
legislaciones y de
challenge in
políticas
the
públicas en nuestros países.
elaboration of public
Va a estar
policies in your
en relación a
hands, in
estos
your own
problemas.
countries. You'll
Hemos
find the
aprendido
solution to your problems. We have found that we can solve these problems that Mr. Boric was referring to. A world without hunger is possible, and it will be possible partly due to the tenacity and boldness that you are showing in the exercise of your task or your actions, that adapting the legislations, allowing all people to make reality that right of right to nutrition, and to build resilient systems. It is also possible, but we mustn't forget the connection to an important agenda, the fight against all gender gaps and the political and social empowerment of women that could be a fundamental part of the solution in this fight against hunger, and also the protection of our environment, our planet, via the adaptation and mitigation of the plan, where the agricultural sector is so important. On behalf of the agency in Spain, I would like to reinforce our commitment as a member of the summit, and I deeply thank the collaboration of all attendees to the summit for your efforts, and I also would like to thank our dear friends at FAO and partners for their great work and coordination. And I'm sure that together we'll be able to promote a real and long-lasting change for our communities and our peoples, with the goal of building a fairer world, for a future more equitable, more sustainable, and particularly a future without hunger. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for your words, Mr. Anton Leis. And I would like to thank the Chamber of Senate and the House of Representatives that have joined us for this first part of the activity. Thank you so much. We'll take a 5-minute break, and whoever's on the table are free to act, and then we'll proceed to invite the organizers to begin with the second half of the activity.
Aló, aló. Invitamos a las autoridades que tienen que ubicarse en la testera a tomar sus ubicaciones para iniciar esta segunda parte de la actividad de esta mañana. Por favor, invitamos a ubicarse a la señora Marcela Villarreal, Carolina Marzán y don Mario Lubetskin en la testera, por favor. Vamos a dar comienzo a esta segunda parte de la actividad. Esta segunda parte brinda una gran oportunidad para compartir experiencias sobre la legislación promulgada en los parlamentos de todo el mundo y su implementación, así como la creación de vínculos entre parlamentarios y parlamentos para una colaboración concreta. A continuación, los invitamos a ver un video introductorio sobre esta segunda cumbre parlamentaria contra el hambre y la malnutrición.
Is not on track to meet the Sustainable Development Goal 2 objective of ending hunger and malnutrition by 2030. Between 702 and 828 million people suffer from chronic hunger, while around 675 million adults are obese. To end hunger and malnutrition, everyone needs to play a role, including governments, businesses, civil society, academia, farmers, and consumers. Parliamentarians have a crucial role to play, using their powers to enact laws, allocate budgets, oversee government action, and generate national consensus. Recognizing this, parliamentarians from around the world have been working to put the fight against hunger and malnutrition at the top of political and legislative agendas. In 2018, around 200 parliamentarians gathered in Madrid for the first Global Parliamentary Pact against hunger and malnutrition, where they committed to redoubling their efforts towards ending hunger and malnutrition by 2030. In this regard, FAO has been supporting more than 50 national, sub-regional, and regional parliamentary networks, which have inspired the adoption of more than 40 laws promoting food security and nutrition. FAO has also organized virtual parliamentary dialogues and thematic sessions for parliamentarians to share lessons and experiences on how to promote food security and nutrition. The Spanish Agency for International Development Corporation and the FAO are organizing a second Global Parliamentary Summit against hunger and malnutrition in 2023. This forthcoming will take stock on progress made and lessons learned since the first summit, and will seek to stimulate enhanced parliamentary action to contribute towards ending hunger and malnutrition by 2030.
Damas y caballeros, si son tan amables.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you were so kind to have a seat. Now, the General Director of Projects of the Mexican Agency of International Cooperation for Development, Mrs. Gloria Sandoval, will have the floor. We invite Mrs. Gloria Sandoval to please reach the podium.
Le rogamos, si son tan amables, quienes se encuentran en el pasillo, tomar asiento para escuchar con
in the
deferencia
hallways,
a la
please take a
señora
seat
Gloria Sandoval,
so that
que
we
desea
can
realizar su
start
exposición.
the
Por
conference.
favor,
Mrs.
se le ruega
Sandoval, who wishes to
tomar asiento.
begin with her presentation.
Muy buenos días a todos y todas. Saludos con mucho agrado a las autoridades.
Good morning. I
a
would
las
like
señoras y señores
to greet the
legisladores presentes.
authorities,
Es un
all
verdadero
the
privilegio concurrir en este honorable
representatives present
recinto
right
en nombre del
here.
Gobierno
It's
de
a
México
privilege to
y
be
transmitir a
here in the
ustedes
name
un
of the
cálido
government
saludo
of
del
Mexico
presidente
and
Andrés
to
Manuel López Obrador,
give
de la
you a
Cancillería
warm
Mexicana
greeting
y de
from
la
the
Agencia Mexicana de
President,
Cooperación Internacional para el
from
Desarrollo.
the
Nos honra
Agency of
compartir con
Cooperation for the
ustedes
Development
este
of
acto inaugural
Mexico.
y
It's
tener
an
la
honor for
oportunidad
us
de
to share
participar
this
en la segunda
inaugural
cumbre
act
parlamentaria
with you
mundial
and
contra
to
el
be a
hambre y
part of the
malnutrición,
second summit
iniciativa conjunta
against
en la que
hunger and
convergen
malnutrition,
gobiernos e
a
instituciones
joint
diversas.
initiative where
Desde
government,
México,
different
tenemos el
institutions
inquebrantable
converge.
compromiso
From
asumido desde
Mexico,
siempre
we
por el
have the
presidente
commitment
López Obrador
that's
de
always,
trabajar
always assumed
prioritariamente
by
por quienes menos tienen
President
y reducir
Lopez
la
to
brecha de
work for
desigualdad.
those who have the
Por
least
ello,
and to
celebramos mucho
reduce
este
the
encuentro que
gap
busca
of,
fortalecer el
of
diálogo y el
inequality. So
trabajo
we
conjunto
are
para
glad
seguir
to be a
haciéndolo,
part of this
enfrentar un
event to
sensible reto,
increase
el hambre y la
dialogue and to
malnutrición en
face
nuestro
this
planeta.
challenge, which is
La
hunger and
Agencia Mexicana
malnutrition
de
in our
Cooperación
planet.
Internacional para el Desarrollo
The
tiene el
Agency of
mandato de
Mexico
trabajar
for
sin descanso
Cooperation and
en estos
Development has a
esfuerzos
mandate of
y dar la mayor
working
prioridad a los
restlessly
programas sociales.
and
En
to
ese
give
marco,
support to
se
social
inscriben
programs.
proyectos ya
In
emblemáticos
that
como
framework,
Sembrando Vida y
we
Jóvenes
have
Construyendo el Futuro.
programs
Y estamos
as
impulsando de la mano de países
Sembrando
hermanos de
Vidas,
Centroamérica y el
and we
Caribe.
are developing this
Después de
with
haber demostrado gran
countries
eficiencia en
such
su
as El Salvador and
implementación
Caribe,
dentro de territorio
since
mexicano.
they became
En el
efficient
mismo
in
sentido,
Mexico. In the
auspiciamos y
same way,
supervisamos el
we
programa
sponsor and
Mesoamérica
supervise the
sin hambre
program
Mexifao y la
Mesoamerica
iniciativa
Without
Caribe
Hunger
Resiliente
and the
México
initiative
Carifondo-FAO, en
Resilient
la que compartimos esfuerzo
Caribbean,
con 14 naciones hermanas de
where
la
we
comunidad del
share
Caribe. En
efforts
el caso de Mesoamérica sin
with
hambre,
Caribbean.
con
In the
base en
case
los
of
resultados
Mesoamerica
favorables
Without
y
Hunger, with
recomendaciones
based in
de una
the
auditoría
results,
externa,
positive
hemos
results, and
extendido el programa
with the
hasta
help of an
diciembre del
audit,
2024
external audit, we
para
extended the
incluir
program
no
till
solamente a
December of
9 países
2024 in
mesoamericanos
order to add
participantes, sino
another
también
other
al
countries
sur-sureste del propio México,
and the
así como
southeast
para
of
buscar
Mexico,
posible
so as
complementariedad
to look for
precisamente con el
possible
programa Sembrando
complementarity
Vida.
with the program
Todos
of
estos programas e
Sembrando Vida.
iniciativas
All these
son previos
programs
a la
and
crisis sanitaria
initiatives are
producida por
previous
COVID-19, la
to
cual
the sanitary
desató
crisis
la
produced
amenaza
by
para la subsistencia,
COVID-19, which developed
agravando
the
la pobreza
threat of
vinculada directamente a la
subsistence,
restricción alimentaria y nutricional de las
deep
poblaciones, acentuando la
making
limitación de
worse the
oportunidades para la
poverty and
generación de empleo
accentuating
e
the
ingresos y
limitations
haciendo
to
más
create
difícil la
jobs,
protección social.
income, and making
Sin
harder the
embargo,
protection,
los programas
social
han demostrado su
protection. However,
pertinencia
the
y valía
programs have
particularmente
developed
en ese contexto, lo que
and
ha
showed
permitido
to
la
be
aprobación y el
helping in
escalamiento de
that
las mismas.
context, which has
Entre otros elementos
turned in
centrales de nuestros
approval
programas,
from
particularmente que
the
buscan fortalecer
country.
los
Other
sistemas
programs
productivos
that
y la
look to
resiliencia
strengthen the productive
agroalimentaria,
system
se encauzan
and
de manera
agroalimentary
mediante
resilience
el impulso a y las sinergias con los frentes
are
parlamentarios contra el hambre a nivel
looking to
regional,
create
nacional y local.
efforts at a
Por ello,
regional,
también
local,
celebramos este
and
foro
national
que es
level.
clave
That's
para
why we
situar la
celebrate
lucha
those
contra el hambre
forums,
y la
which is
malnutrición
key
en el más alto nivel de las
to
agendas
fight
públicas.
hunger and malnutrition, and we
Reconocemos
set
los
it at the
esfuerzos
highest
parlamentarios
level
en toda la
of
orbe y en particular
importance.
del Frente
We
Parlamentario contra el
acknowledge
Hambre
all
de
the
América
efforts
Latina y
and
el
the
Caribe y
parliamentary
el Parlamento
front against
Latinoamericano
hunger of Latin
y
America and
Caribeño,
Caribbean,
no solo en el impulso a
and the
debates y
Parliament of
legislaciones
Latin America
nacionales,
and Caribbean,
sino a un
not only
ámbito
with
cada vez
national
más amplio,
legislations
hacia
and
leyes
debates,
modelos
but
relevantes
broader
para
and
la
looking
seguridad
to
alimentaria, la
modern
pesca, el
legislation
agua,
to
el
ensure
saneamiento,
safety,
las cuales se encuentran
water,
disponibles en
safety,
español,
and which are
inglés,
available in
francés y
Spanish,
portugués.
English, French, and
Sabemos que falta
Portuguese.
mucho por hacer y
We
debemos
know
redoblar
there's a
esfuerzos,
lot to be
pero
done
nos
and we have
alienta
to
mucho
double our
observar que estamos
effort,
haciéndolo
but we're
correctamente
happy
y
to
de manera
see that we
conjunta.
are doing this
Debemos seguir
right
construyendo
and
una alianza
jointly.
parlamentaria
We need to
global
continue to
que esté
work
alineada con una
alliances with
nueva
parliaments
forma de
from all
política
around the world
donde las mismas
aligned with these new
comunidades,
ways of
regiones
policy,
y países puedan
where
construir
regions,
estrategias que
countries
garanticen
can
realmente el
build
derecho humano a
strategies
la
that
alimentación
guarantee the
desde el
human right to
reconocimiento de
food
sus propias
from the
necesidades. Muchas gracias.
acknowledging their own needs. issues. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias por las palabras de la señora
Thank you for your words.
Gloria Sandoval. A continuación, los invito a ver el siguiente video, el saludo del señor Ron Hartman, director de la División de Participación Activa, Asociación y Movilización de Recursos del FIDA.
Excellencies. Firstly, I would like to thank His Excellency the
Excellencias,
President
primero
of Chile for
quisiera
hosting this
agradecer a su
event,
excelencia
and
el
to
presidente.
other organizers, the Spanish Development Cooperation, the FAO, the European Commission, and the Mexican Agency for International Cooperation for Development, to name a few. I sincerely regret not being there with you in person today and send greetings from the G20 Agricultural Ministers meeting in India. Global hunger and food insecurity are pressing global issues. Freedom from hunger is a fundamental right for every person on earth. Yet, today, over 700 million children, women, and men suffer from chronic undernourishment. This is unacceptable in 2023. Climate change, conflicts, pandemics, and depleted natural resources have intensified this dire situation. And crippling debt hinders the ability of many governments to invest in their own development. After years of underinvestment in food systems, we are losing the battle against rising hunger. Yet, the goal of achieving zero hunger by 2030 still remains within our grasp. Climate-smart technologies, improved resilience, and nature-based solutions are proven ways for farmers to produce more food, even in the face of drought, climate change, and other challenges. This summit today is instrumental in the fight against hunger and malnutrition. At IFAD, we've witnessed firsthand the power of rural people and small-scale and family farmers to improve food security. Small-scale and family farmers are important for many reasons, but let me highlight just three. Firstly, the majority of the world's hungriest people reside in the rural areas of developing countries. Indeed, over 3 billion people depend on small farms for their sustenance and their livelihoods. Secondly, these small farms function as the backbone of rural economies and livelihoods. They provide jobs and hope for remote rural communities in disadvantaged populations. As we know, in the rural areas, food security is security. Third, in view of the challenges posed by environmental degradation, not only are these farms efficient, but they also have a smaller ecological footprint, preserving biodiversity and providing habitats for diverse plant life, insects, and pollinators. To unlock their full potential, they need strong supporters, from policymakers such as yourselves, who can enact enabling policies to support the vulnerable to overcome barriers, to adopt new technologies, develop new skills, access finance, and also to strike fair and equitable partnerships with the private sector. All of this will be needed if we, as a global community, are to deliver on Agenda 2030 and to eliminate poverty and hunger in all its forms. We know that there is an urgent need for increased investment that supports the building of resilience of rural populations and small-scale and family farmers. Proactively addressing problems costs significantly less than responding to emergencies. Every dollar invested in long-term resilience can save up to $10 in future emergency aid. We need to break the cycle of crisis. Excellencies, we must break the vicious cycle of crisis and hunger. With the right investments and support, it's not too late to achieve a hunger-free world. We at IFAD stand ready to support. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Ahora corresponde ver el siguiente video.
Thank you very much. Now we'll watch another video. Greetings from Ambassador Mario Arvelo, President of the Directive Committee of the Decennial of the United Nations for Family Agriculture and representative of Dominican Republic for FAO.
Honorable members of Parliament, it is a privilege
Miembros honorables del
to address this opening session My name is Mario Arvelo. I am the ambassador of the Dominican Republic to the Rome-based agencies of the United Nations. As chair of the International Steering Committee of the UN Decade of Family Farming, I call upon all parliamentarian alliances against hunger and malnutrition to support the work of this global platform. Going from 2019 to 2028, the Decade of Action aims to develop, improve, and implement public policies and investments while contributing to the transformative ambitions of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. When we speak about family farmers, we include everyone working to produce the food we eat: peasants, fisherfolk, pastoralists, indigenous peoples, mountain and forest communities, all of whom are exposed to massive challenges. Let me tell you about the 80% paradox. It is heartbreaking to see that family farmers produce 4/5 of the world's food, while the same proportion, 80% of those suffering from chronic hunger, are family farmers and their children. Smallholder family farmers protect biodiversity and conserve the planet's ecosystems for the benefit of everyone. They are the guardians of soils, water, and the environment. This summit takes place during tough times. Global levels of hunger and malnutrition have increased alarmingly in the last 4 years. We continue to witness and suffer the climate crisis. We are still dealing with the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic. The economic and social impact of the war in Ukraine exacerbates burdens for family farmers and consumers all over the world. Armed conflict, climate change, and insufficient attention to the rural areas generate waves of migrants seeking a future for themselves and their families beyond their country's frontiers. All these crises are amplifying inequalities, putting us at a critical juncture. We need to do things differently and act together to transform our agri-food systems. The Decade of Family Farming gives us an extraordinary opportunity to take bold actions towards new and better laws and policies. These normative innovations will allow governments, civil society, and the private sector to come together in programs and projects to tackle the needs of today and tomorrow, while expanding the inclusion, economic capacity, and diversity of family farmers, advancing towards agri-food systems ever more resilient and sustainable. Honorable members of Parliament, you have the democratic legitimacy and the power to make rules, approve budgets, and monitor implementation of public policies. I invite you to join forces with us. The Joint Secretariat of the Decade of Family Farming is comprised of technical experts from 2 UN agencies, the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, and the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD. The Secretariat and the committee I preside will be in touch with you to follow up. Thank you.
A continuación, dejo con ustedes al diputado Duarte Pacheco, presidente de la Unión Interparlamentaria.
Mr. Director General of FAO, dear colleagues, parliamentarians, members of Diplomatic Corps, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, I am not available to attend this important meeting as President of Interparliamentary Union. But I wish to address you just 2 words. The first one, to say how important is the topic you are discussing. We are discussing something that is one fundamental human right. Every human being needs to have what we need to our food and drink. And when we have any kind of conflicts, any kind of circumstances about religions, political, ideological, or wars, or cultural events that will put problems to assure that everyone has the food they need to survive, we are talking about one basic human right that is offended. We parliamentarians and IPU, we defend human rights for everyone, all the time. That's why we think that, yes, we may have divergences between ourselves, but with dialogue we will solve our problems. We should also solve all the divergences that may happen between countries, between religions, between cultures, and find solutions to the problems of humankind. And this way, we will defend these human basic rights. Alimentation, food that is essential for everyone. Unfortunately, we assume that the war of the Russian Federation against Ukraine affected a lot of countries because the grains are not leaving from Ukraine to many countries, for instance, in Africa. Also, because at international markets, the prices rise so much that many families have difficulties to buy the basic of their diet. But also because United Nations humanitarian programs have limited budgets. And so, as the prices rise, they are not available to continue the programs they have been. We're suffering the people. That's why we should work day by day to understand that dialogue is always the solution to divergences, never the war. That's why I hope that the discussion during these days, that in this meeting, will help us to find solutions to this problem in our world. And this way, we will solve the basic problems of humankind. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you all the success for this meeting.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Now we will welcome the greeting via video from Cynthia Jacopo, Vice President of the Latin Parliament. I would like to greet everyone present, especially Mario Luquin, Subdirector of FAO and the Regional Representative for Latin America and the Caribbean, the President of the Senate and the Chamber of Representatives in Chile, the Presidents of Parliaments, Presidents of the Executive Coordination of the Front Against Hunger, and all the representatives present in the second summit against hunger and malnutrition. This summit finds that in a complex moment where the numbers of hunger and malnutrition have increased as a product of a triple crisis: climatic, sanitary, and bellic. The projections show that in 2030, when the world has to show the results of the goals of the sustainable development, and zero hunger will be still far away from reaching all the goals. This should not discourage us. This should be a call for parliamentary action to revert this reality through legislation, budget, fiscal inspection, and articulation of more alliances. What we're doing from the Latin American and Caribbean Parliament through a fruitful alliance with FAO and the support and cooperation with Spain and Mexico, with the goal of placing in the highest of the political agendas of the region the fight against hunger and malnutrition in all their ways. I would like to highlight the fundamental role of the Parliamentary Front Against Hunger in Latin America and the Caribbean in the platform of parliamentary collaboration in the region that has driven the creation of over 80 laws around the ODS2, without which the numbers of hunger and malnutrition would be much worse today. Currently, the Front aspires to a construction that's broader walking along Spain and Portugal for an alliance, Ibero-American alliance for the security of food. This is a calling that I'm making to you all. Let's join together and articulate even stronger alliances that are more inclusive. The summit is a new landmark when we're building networks of trust, agreements, and articulations to execute the role of the Parliament when we're working in order to provide dignified nutrition for everyone. I greet everyone present, especially Mario Lubikin, General Subdirector of FAO and Regional Representative for Latin America and the Caribbean, the Presidents of the Senate.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Esta cumbre también entrega la oportunidad de
The
debatir
summit also
sobre
provides
las
us with the opportunity
necesidades
to
y
debate
prioridades expresadas
about the
y
needs and
identificadas
priorities that
previamente
have
por
been
las
expressed and
parlamentarias
identified
y los
previously by
parlamentarios
the
con
Parliament
el fin de
members
abordar los desafíos asociados
with the
en
aim
la
of
lucha contra el
identifying
hambre
the
y la
related challenges
malnutrición
in
y
this
explorar
fight against
las
hunger and
posibilidades de
malnutrition
compromisos
and
formales
explore the
voluntarios
needs
de las
for
redes de
formal
parlamentarios
commitments and voluntary
sobre un
commitments
potencial
in the
pacto
network
mundial
of
que
parliaments
incluya un monitoreo
in
y
the World
seguimiento
Pact,
periódico
including
de los
inspection
resultados
and
y los
continuous
logros
follow-up on the
legislativos.
results and
Invitamos
legislative
a
outcomes.
continuación a hacer
Now
uso
we
de la palabra
invite
a
to
Marau
take the
Asane,
floor Mrs. Marau Asane,
representante del Parlamento Panafricano.
representative of the Pan American Parliament.
Monsieur le Président de la Chambre des députés, Monsieur le Président du Sénat, Monsieur le représentant de la FAO, chers collègues parlementaires de tous les coins du monde, distingués participants à vos titres, grades et qualités respectifs, permettez-moi, dès l'entame de mon propos, de m'acquitter d'abord d'un double devoir noble. Premièrement, de celui de m'adresser à la FAO et tous les autres organisateurs de ce sommet mondial. Nos remerciements les plus cordiaux pour avoir fait l'honneur au Parlement panafricain de participer à ces assises. Ensuite, celui de vous transmettre les salutations les plus chaleureuses du président et du bureau du Parlement panafricain, Fortunatus Cherambura,
Our
ainsi que
warm
les vœux les
welcome
meilleurs
to the
de voir ces assises
Pan-African
contribuer
Parliament.
à la redynamisation et au rayonnement de l'action et du plaidoyer parlementaire visant à briser le silence infernal de la malnutrition et de la faim dans le monde.
We will contribute
FAO nous a
to
présenté certaines des données les
the
plus
challenge of ending malnutrition. FAO presented us with the current trends on hunger and malnutrition. In 2021, Hunger reached over 270 million people in Africa, 56 million people in Latin America and the Caribbean, and food insecurity, the moderate to severe, increased also very dramatically in a region which shows the highest prevalence in the world. The latest world data on the prevalence of undernutrition and malnutrition give us information on world disparities and inequalities. Africa has the heaviest task. A vast part of its population is facing hunger. However, Africa has a huge potential. The important young population represents an exponential demographic that with a proper investment could contribute to equitable development, and great progress was developed in our region. The past years, the mortality of children younger than 5 years old decreased in 50% between 1994 and 2015. However, malnutrition and undernutrition continue to be an unacceptable cause of over half the children's deaths, and obesity and non-transmissible deaths related to food are an aggravating factor, and malnutrition is one of the worst causes of malnutrition in children younger than 5 years old. Malnutrition contributes to stopping, hindering the development of African countries, causing negative and unacceptable conditions for individuals and communities in countries. Despite the existing challenges in matters of malnutrition, the World Health Crisis of COVID-19 exposed the economic vulnerability of African countries and their health systems and safety systems, and the virus caused plenty of damage in African countries, causing an aggravation of malnutrition and modifying the distribution and allocation of national resources for particularly the most vulnerable people. It is now more important than ever to invest in human capital, as it is also to invest on much needed investments on the most vulnerable sectors of the population. Based on this, the Assembly of the African Union approved in 2022 the year of nutrition actions in order to reinforce food security in the African continent, and also to reinforce the agro-food systems and social protection systems to accelerate the development of the social and human capital. This represents a crucial occasion to offer solutions to face the challenges that are continuous in the continent, reinforcing agro-food systems in the African continent thanks to multi-sectoral investments promising to catalyze the human capital in the continent. The national parliaments play a key role to allow this vision to move forward and this program to be concrete. The parliamentary actions were key to place food security and nutrition and the right to proper nutrition as a priority and to accelerate the proper financing, to implement measures focused on inequalities and injustice in matters of nutrition. The progress of Latin America in recent years have incentivized, have motivated all parliament members to join forces in countries and among countries, horizontally, bilaterally, multilaterally in the political spectrum to allow for progress in food security matters and nutrition matters. The African parliamentarians decided to play more active roles and be part of this change in the implementation of networks and parliamentary alliances in relation to food security and nutrition region-wide and nationwide, with programs in Africa that guide us and can serve as inspiration for countries that are seeking to elaborate and make changes nationally. We, as members of the African Parliamentary Alliance for Food Security and Nutrition, are willing to collaborate with you to achieve this vision of a world in which no child has to suffer from hunger and we can guarantee their right to nutrition. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you for your words. Now we'll continue with a video of the President of the Interparliamentary Assembly of ASEAN and President of the House of Representatives of the Republic of Indonesia, Puan Maharani.
Esteemed parliamentarians, distinguished delegates, let me start by expressing my utmost appreciation to all parliamentary fellows who share similar concern on the issue of hunger and malnutrition. The second Global Parliamentary Summit is very timely, as it is held against the background of current global situation, which is fueled by multiple pressures. The world has experienced global economic uncertainties, interstate war, geopolitical tension, and threat of environmental crisis. In addition to that, the pandemic has added 10 million children suffering from acute malnutrition and stunting. Women, girls, and children were the most impacted group and massively hit by the pandemic. At the same time, the declining prevalence of stunting is uneven across the global region. In Southeast Asia, UNICEF reported in 2021 that around 27.4% of children under 5 years of age are still stunted. To cope with these challenges, parliamentary can play a leading role. Parliament has the authority to draft and adopt legislation, allocate public funds, and monitor government policy in combating hunger and malnutrition. We have to make sure that Parliament can contribute to guarantee enough food supply, especially for those in need. We have also to guarantee the availability, accessibility, and affordability of food for all. Distinguished delegates, allow me now to briefly highlight the efforts to tackle malnutrition in Indonesia. Nowadays, Indonesia is the fourth largest, most populous country in the world, with a significant number of children population of around 80 million in 2021. Positive record of the children's health has been made, but malnutrition and stunting are still one of our biggest challenges. We are now focusing on 3 priorities. First, to provide iron supplement for women and teenage girls in all areas in Indonesia. Second, to conduct more regular and intensive pregnancy check-up of pregnant women. Third, to provide food supplement for babies whenever necessary. Above all, we focus on health education about pregnancy with strong involvement of local communities. Distinguished delegates, international cooperation can play an important role to address the issues of hunger and malnutrition. We should mobilize global partnership to fill the gap of the shortage of food supply and to solve malnutrition. Therefore, let us work together in this Global Parliamentary Summit to mobilize political commitment and action and to make tangible results in our fight against hunger and malnutrition. I thank you.
Honorable Representative Lina Pizier from the European Parliament will send a remote regard.
Special thanks to Director General Ku for the invitation and warm greetings to all eminent guests. I am delighted to contribute to the second Global Parliamentary Summit against hunger and malnutrition, an important occasion to discuss one of the main Sustainable Development Goals. With this short introduction, I want to praise your summit on behalf of the European Parliament and bring our full support to your forum and FAO. We live in complex times. The consequences of COVID-19 pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and the more and more alarming climate change. All these events have severely resulted in more people suffering from hunger, food insecurity, and malnutrition as well. Pledging for the EU and Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals in then essential as never before. However, we also know that we need to seek more strong actions to tackle agri-food system disruption, poverty, and global food security. Mitigating food insecurity is now our biggest challenge, and the parliaments can play an essential role in achieving these goals. We can be decisive in adopting key legislation, boosting interparliamentary relations, and mobilize citizens. The European Parliament is very committed on this. It's time to speed up our effort and translate strategies into concrete actions. We need to safeguard the right to food of developing countries and self-sufficiency as a means of achieving nutritional security, poverty reduction, and inclusive, sustainable, and fair global supply chains. We have to support local and regional markets with particular attention to women and family farming, with the aim of securing the supply of the affordable and accessible food and stronger social safety nets to ensure that the most vulnerable continue to have food even in emergency or crisis situation. I am sure You are also aware of our effort in guaranteeing exports of food supplies from Ukraine, brutally hit by the aggression of Russia, since it was a big provider of food in the developing countries. Our commitment will continue also in other different critical situations around the world, but we are all responsible for achieving these goals. And your summit is a great opportunity to strengthen the Parliament's role. There is still a long way to go, but I am sure our work will continue and will have a great impact in fighting malnutrition and hunger. So thank you again for this important opportunity.
A continuación, con el honorable diputado Jergues Mercado Suárez, presidente del Parlamento.
Honorable Representative Mr. Juarez, representative of the Bolivian Parliament, will now take the floor.
Muy buenos días. En primer lugar, permítanme saludar a Luis Redondo.
Good morning. Greetings to Mr. Redondo, President of the House of Representatives of Honduras, and the regional representative of FAO, Mr. Mario Lubezkin, and his team, of course, Carolia Marsam, coordinator of the Parliamentary Front Against Hunger and Malnutrition from Chile.
Say hello to everybody here in this place. Assalamu alaikum, kaifa hala.
And warm greetings to all representatives from different parts of this common house, planet Earth. It is the only place we have to live. I would like to thank the Chilean people for the warm welcome we have had in this day. Today, we are attending the summit after participating yesterday on the 10th Forum of the Parliamentary Front Against Hunger and Malnutrition of Latin America and the Caribbean, where we emphasized that hunger is not just a matter of food scarcity, that is fundamentally a result of the inequality and the development models that are concentrating wealth. It is a global issue, and the most developed countries are unfortunately spending more on weapons than in the fight against hunger or mitigating poverty. We are convinced that by promoting the implementation of public policies that support inequalities and promote inclusion and women equality, we can face hunger. And today, with shame, we can say that 11 million people pass away every year due to lack of food and hunger. We can be today giving pretty nice speeches, but 4,000 children have already passed around the world due to hunger and malnutrition. That is the sad, awful reality in the 21st century for our humanity, when there's a surplus of food and of technology, and where we have all the conditions to feed the world. All of these people are dying of hunger. 800 people, as it has been said, over 800 people are suffering from this scourge. It is certain that we have enough practices to do this, and this is the scenario for the countries to face jointly this problem. And I would like to say that we are willing to learn from all of you and are ready to share our own experience, because in our government, since its change process from 2010 so far, we have eliminated from poverty 27 27,000 people, 27% of people. We have designed the Patriotic Agenda 2025 with their 13 pillars, and we have focused on the basic utilities to guarantee food safety with sovereignty and equality. We have passed several laws, the agricultural livestock law, and where we involve family agricultural members to participate in this, and we've created a public insurance to protect families from natural disasters due to climate change. We have promoted political leadership among women, and 49% of our House of Representatives is formed by women. Several of the representatives here are women, and 60% of the Chamber of Senate are women. And we're convinced that by empowering women in all political and economic spheres is also a way of fighting against hunger, because women are the ones who worry the most that food is enough for everyone in the households. We are aware that the role of parliamentarians is crucial to face the aforementioned challenges and to implement the programs that are as important as the budget for their implementation and inspection of the progress of the right of food. And in 2018, after 6 years of negotiation in the Council of Human Rights, my country, Bolivia, contributed in the World Council with a declaration on the right of farmers and other people who work in rural areas. And this statement seeks to strengthen the potential of our brothers and sisters in the farms to face the crisis that our earth is facing with the food crisis. And the small farmers are feeding 70 to 80% of the world population, but despite that, they represent 80% of the people who are living in hunger around the world and 70% of the people living in extreme poverty. That is the paradox that was said earlier. Latin America produces much more food that we need, and we have over 50 million people living in hunger, where the farmers are producing the food for the rest of the world. We are encouraging states to show leadership and implement the Declaration of the Rights of Farmers and the other people working in rural sectors by incorporating these norms and standards in their national policies as a way of fighting against hunger. I remind you again, over 4,000 children have already passed away today due to hunger. So we expect clear proposals from the summit to globally eradicate a global problem, the hunger that is devastating our planet. Thank you.
Thank you for your words. Now, Deputy Congresswoman Samira Sacramento, President of the National Assembly of Santo Tomé and Príncipe.
Antes de mais, quero saudar a mesa e a todos aqui presentes, trazendo os cumprimentos do país que represento, que é a República Democrática de São Tomé e Príncipe. Se sintam cumprimentados. Excelentíssimo Senhor Presidente da Frente Parlamentar contra a Fome e a Malnutrição de Chile, Excelentíssimo Senhor presidente do Comitê de Segurança Alimentar Mundial, excelentíssimo senhor diretor-geral da FAO, excelentíssimos senhores representantes das agências das Nações Unidas, excelentíssimo senhor vice-presidente do Parlamento Europeu, a senhora vice-presidente, excelentíssimo senhor presidente da Assembleia Interparlamentar da ASEAN e representante da Câmara dos Representantes da Indonésia, excelentíssimos senhores representantes da Agência Espanhola de Cooperação Internacional para o Desenvolvimento e da Agência Mexicana para o Desenvolvimento e Cooperação Internacional, excelentíssimo senhor representante do Parlamento Latino-Americano, excelentíssimos senhores representantes
Excellencies, representatives of the Pan-American Parliament, Excellencies, Ordinary Sub-Regional Regional President for FAO, Excellencies, members of the different parliaments here present, professionals and members of the responsible teams of organization, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, it's with great happiness, with great joy that I'm addressing you in this prestigious floor where we will be for the next 2 days to reflect about the strengthening of the political commitment to reach the goals of the sustainable development internationally, to combat hunger and malnutrition around the world, consider the greatest challenge in the world. The World Day of Food Security, celebrated on June 12th, allowed us to reflect on the opportunity of strengthening the spaces and the steps taken towards guaranteeing that the food that we are eating is safe, and to create consciousness about those who cultivate, sell, and make food, and to think about the security of foods. So the invitation of the director of the United Nations FAO, we accepted the challenge, and we are here present representing the National Assembly of São Tomé and Príncipe, and for the first time we are participating in an event of this nature in this big metropolis, which is the Republic of Chile, and we are very honored, and we would like to take the opportunity to thank you for the warm welcome you gave us. Talking about the recognized reference, when we are looking to follow the steps for the Agenda of 2030 for the development, we congratulate the Spanish agency, the Organization for Food and Agriculture, and the Chilean authorities for the second organization of the summit. We are convinced that this 2 days of shared experience will allow us to identify roads to surpass the challenges that the agroalimentary services are presenting right now. Excellencies, the third World Reunion of 2006 indicates that a third of the world population is malnourished. According to this, 30% of the food are wasted on the one hand, and on the other, after the pandemic, the development of conflict in several areas of the world, the effect of the climate changes, the war in Ukraine, and that has increased the concern of the international public, and it has about the problems and the difficulties created to ensure food to the world. So we call everyone to help us to create ways to manage the risks created and contribute to food safety, security, human health, and economic development, and to create the necessary changes to transform lives, communities in the future in a sustainable way, considering the eradication of poverty and consequently malnutrition. Regarding that, FAO has created efforts to modernize food production systems to create access to those those more vulnerable. It's our obligation to guarantee that everyone has regular and permanent access to good quality food and in sufficient quantities, and to compromise without compromising the access to other essentials for life. The SAO of Tomé and Príncipe assumes these engagements regarding the crucial role to represent, legislate, and audit. And we are present here and we are participating in the second conference with the president and other alliances in Central Africa, Rapatsa, that happened during the end of February of this year, formalizing that way the constitution of its alliance as the third country in the sub-region of Central Africa to be a part of it, to enter the network. Our deputies and members of the Alliance for Secure Food Safety were trained in the area of food security and nutrition, led by FAO, in a series of national assemblies. And I would like to take advantage of this moment to emphasize this initiative relatively the competences and the legislative domain. Sponsored by FAO, which helped us to look for legal instruments regarding food safety and nutritional safety. The National Program of Food and School Security, the Law of Commercialization of Soup Institute, and the law decree regarding the food genders, food equality, and the financial fund for food and health. The decree that creates the National Safety Fund for Food in Tomé and Príncipe, Sao Tomé and Príncipe, and the unit and the project of support of commercialization, productivity, agricultural productivity, COMPRA, the dispatch of the Ministry of Agriculture that creates a Cabinet of Security and Food Safety, the presidential decree that certifies the agreement of commercialization, agricultural productivity and nutrition approved by the National Assembly. In this sense, and on the name of the delegation that is here with me, I would like to manifest our availability to constitute and our willingness to create alliances for a better world for us and for everyone. Those are the considerations that I can provide right now, having the privilege to present the contribution of the Parliament of my country, and together we can contribute to the eradication of hunger and malnutrition in the world. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now we would like to invite Luis Redondo from the Honduran Republic. I'm hungry.
Mire mi boca un momento, por favor.
Look at my mouth for a second, please. I'm hungry.
Son de las primeras palabras que he escuchado en algún
These are the first words I listened to at home from my children. Dad, I'm hungry. The world is saying right now, I'm hungry. That's why, in the framework of the celebration of this World Summit, I would like to congratulate FAO. I would like to congratulate Chile, Carolina Marzán, for the event she organized here in Chile, but especially because through this summit, we will say what we're doing in order to respond to our children when they say they're hungry. If you allow me, I will not greet everyone. I will just thank you for your presence and let you know that, and let you know what we are doing in order to respond to that claim. I'm hungry. In a world where more money is invested in providing resources to debate the results of war and death. Every cent invested by Chile, by FAO, is a huge exponential investment, and every cent that we can invest in our countries represents a response through the different parliamentaries and the nutrition programs in our country. It's a response to that I'm hungry. And I said that because if we don't feel it, I mean, the world talked to us during the pandemic. We were hungry. We had money, but we didn't have any food. Do you know what our neighbors did? One of them said, I have eggs. I will get lemons, said another. And we started sharing amongst neighbors in a moment that humanity never thought would experience. Now, Chile and FAO are doing the same with the summit. They're sharing information with us, success stories around the country, from all the countries here. Like during the pandemic, what did we learn? The response. So it's an honor to be here in such an important day in this organization for the United Nations and FAO for the second summit against hunger and malnutrition, and representative of the Congress of Honduras and the Forum of Presidents of the legislative powers of Latin America, the Caribbean, and Mexico, FOPREM. I would like to greet you all. In order to begin, I would like to highlight that we have taken huge steps regionally and internationally. Currently, we have very important frameworks and public policies implemented by firm political commitments. Our presence shows it's proof of said commitment. However, the execution of the human right to food and food safety are permanent and continuous actions. In that sense, it's important to highlight that our parliament, that over our parliament holds the weight of adopting legislative frameworks, approving public budgets, and foresee public policies that will secure food security and nutrition in the political agendas of our countries, for which we require a collective action and focused action to guarantee through these regional and international spaces that nobody will be left behind, that nobody will be left without food. We need to guarantee that each of our countries ends every kind of malnutrition and to eradicate hunger. So we need to ensure access of everyone to food, particularly those who are in vulnerable situations. A key aspect where mutual cooperation and collective action are vital. The transformation of our agro-food systems around the world. It's important for our parliaments to have a shared visions like the one we obtained from these spaces. The pandemic left pain, but also important teachings. First, it made evident the food systems that we have needing to be redefined and strengthened. So these mechanisms through which we fight malnutrition and hunger need to be rethought, and it's urgent to think of priority areas of work and to reassure the commitment, political commitment from our parliament. Today, we need a new start and a renewed commitment from the challenges against malnutrition. I would like to express my gratefulness to all the present here in order to continue to work for sustainable agriculture, because we're facing challenges, world challenges, and it's important to guarantee that everyone has the access to safe, enough food, nutritional food. Around 828 million people around the world are still living in hunger, according to a report from the UN in the year 2021. It's our collective effort to end that situation, and we have to make it in a sustainable way, considering the effects of climate change and the needs to maintain our natural resources and preserve them for future generations. For us in Honduras, our vision as a government about food safety is clear. It's not only about justice and human rights, but also a fundamental requirement to achieve long-lasting peace and a sustainable development and reducing hunger-based migration. Only in Honduras, the amount of people in food insecurity has doubled to 2.8 million before the pandemic and hurricanes Eta and Iota, to an incredible amount, 4.4 million people, number that can increase without the required elements. They do not have the energy to thrive. Malnutrition affects the kids. They cannot develop properly, which has repercussions in the potential of our societies. We acknowledge that after the first World Parliamentary Summit around the world against hunger, our country assumed a commitment that has been met. And on March 18th of 2014, FOPREL also established a commitment on the framework of the law of school food safety, which produced the decree 125 of 2016, which is a reality now in Honduras. During the first summit, Honduras also approved the law of food safety and the transversal law for the program of solidarity credit for rural women, so as the health of production areas law after the pandemic, and the law that declares that it is a priority to support the area that produces food to ensure food security. Everything on the framework of the action plan of the first summit. We know it's not enough because sustainable agriculture has a very important role in food safety. So we need to adopt agricultural practices that respect the environment, promoting conservation of the soil, the protection of biodiversity, and the efficient management of waters. And we need to have access to current scientific knowledge in order to have agricultural sustainable production with not overlooking pollination. And it's key to increase the collaboration between countries, between the states, the civil society, and the government. FAO has a key role in this sense, acting as a world platform to share knowledge, promotion of good practices, and the moving of resources. So we need to acknowledge that food safety and sustainable agriculture are connected goals for the human development. As a global community, we need to double our efforts to eradicate hunger and promote systems that are sustainable. I trust that with the collaboration of all those here present and that are seeing us through the transmission all around the world, we can have complementary legislation that complement the ones in other countries. So what I'm trying to say is it's time for us to have an inventory of global production that works as a supply distribution system of food for the areas that are more affected by climate change. and the less privileged. That is a challenge. So in the name of all the Congress people of Honduras, you can count on the Congress of the Republic of Honduras. PAO can count on us, and the members of the Interplanetary FOPREL, which integrates the presidents of Latin America, Mexico, and the Caribbean. I trust that we can transform the agro-food industry and to create good sources of food so we can eradicate malnutrition and hunger. Food, peace be with you. Thank you.
Now we'll continue with the words of Representative Sauto Calzar, Minister of Agriculture of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, colleagues, I wish to congratulate the organizers of the second Global Parliamentary Summit Against Hunger and Malnutrition. Today we are gathered to address a global challenge of immense proportion. Over 800 million food vulnerable citizens in different regions of the world bring to bear the fierce urgency of now, as solutions must be found. To create unique solutions in addressing this problem, there are four fundamental pillars. One, there has to be a clear establishment of the political will to reduce hunger and undernourishment. We must want to do this as parliamentarians. Two, after the creation and establishment of the political will, we must ensure that in our parliaments, we have the legislative frameworks that will engender hope for the poor. The right to food is a fundamental human right. It is one thing to have the political will, another thing to have a legislative framework, but we must carefully mobilize the factors of production, land, labor, and capital, to ensure that those who are vulnerable can increase production and productivity. And it is very important, after we mobilize the factors of production, that we have a clear strategy for implementation. Mr. Chair, I wish to congratulate the FAO, ICA, and all other implementing agencies working globally to reduce hunger and undernourishment. Mr. Chair, it will be remiss of me if I do not state that there are many systemic factors which perpetuate hunger. And these are outside of the regularly mentioned impacts of COVID-19 pandemic and the inflation caused because of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Mr. Chair, please permit me to list them. One, there is the abuse in some regions of vulnerable groups by multinationals paying wages below a living wage. Cheap labor perpetuates poverty and, by extension, hunger. Two, a low value placed on primary products exported from developing countries will continue to lock many populations within developing countries in a situation where they cannot rid themselves of hunger. 3, the failure to right the historic wrong of colonization. This is a call for reparatory justice to assist many who are still grappling in the aftermath of slavery and genocide. Where there is no justice, there would always be hunger. 4, global conflict contributes significantly to vulnerabilities and hunger. We are spending far too much on weapons for wars and not on food. And 5, major pollutants devastate food systems in activities which we commonly call today climate change. 6, the vulnerabilities of small island states within the World Trade Organization and its trade system, in many instances, is not acting in the interests of smallholder producers. Mr. Chair, in Georgetown, Guyana, on the 27th of June 2023, CELAC member states will meet to discuss food and nutrition security in our region, Latin America and the Caribbean. And the Organization of the Eastern Caribbean States will meet in Grenada on the 30th of June, also to address issues of food security, because food must always be available, accessible, and affordable. Food is a human right, and I look forward for an excellent discussion coming out of this summit. But we must be fair and frank and discuss the issues that are at hand. Thank you very much.
We'd like to invite Ambassador Gabriel Ferrero, President of the Committee on World Food Security.
Señora Presidenta,
President and Regional Director of the FAO, ladies and gentlemen, authorities, with all due respect and following all protocols, it is an honor as President of the Committee on World Food Safety of the United Nations under FAO. Pleasure to address you and to be here at the second Global Parliamentary Summit against Hunger and Malnutrition, after the first one held in Madrid in 2018, and it is even a greater pleasure doing it in my capacity as ambassador. It is a huge honor to carry the warm greeting of the countries that we're representing, and dear excellencies, let us not ignore that we are living in difficult times. Hunger and malnutrition in all of its different shapes and colors are, of course, tremendous challenges. As it has been mentioned, 1 out of 3 people around the world suffers at least one way of malnutrition, and 3 million people in our planet cannot have the right access to a healthy diet. The consequences of the pandemic and the effects of climate change and the conflicts, including the war in Ukraine, are worsening a situation that was not good to start with. And we are seeing how the different advancements in human development in many countries that took decades are being lost. But the good news, ladies and gentlemen, is that we are aware of the solutions. We know what the right ones are for now and the future, the transformation of our agricultural and food systems to guarantee food security and nutrition, to guarantee healthy diets for nutrition for people, for healthy and dignified job positions for different producers, the biodiversity that is feasible. If we improve these systems, we'll have access to better nutrition, and we will eradicate rural malnutrition and will take better care of our ecosystems. This transformation is a collective responsibility and a shared one of all stakeholders that should be a part of this effort from international cooperation. And I take this chance to acknowledge and congratulate the Spanish Agency for Cooperation and the Mexican Agency for Development for their support to the summit. As I said, the International Agency for Global Cooperation, all of the different agencies moving for different territories, and it is your work as key stakeholders to this transformation, and as parliament members and representatives of the citizens, you have the power and the mandate to go from the legislature to promote the much needed policies. You hold the key to enable the legislative frameworks and the regulatory framework, the regional frameworks and the public resources, the United Nations Council on Food Security is willing to do even more efforts, make more efforts, and the World Committee and its governance has mentioned with all of its states, it's 138 states, including some of yours, that are joining the civil society and representatives of the private sector, research, and financial world in this task. And of course, the United Nations and FAO with the World Food Program and the International Fund for Agricultural Development, representatives of the foundations and other stakeholders joined in this committee. Dear friends, we are to deliberate and finally agree upon the necessary political frameworks in order to make the right for proper nutrition a reality. And with the passing of the years, the committee has developed and endorsed through this inclusive approach, not only of the governments, but of all stakeholders, different world agreements on matters that affect the fight on the right to nutrition and responsible governance on land property, natural resources, and even about the characteristics and principles of responsible investment on agriculture, ranging from the connection from the small farmers with the investors and others towards sustainable agriculture, from addressing food security in long-lasting crisis up to, as we saw yesterday, even last night, to agreeing on global guidelines on gender equality and the promotion and empowerment on women and girls in the context of food safety worldwide. Your Excellencies, the political tools that our governments are agreeing upon in the Council, World Council on Food Safety exist to support your efforts, to support your work on your national parliaments. These are your tools. Make use of them as a reference to support your tasks, your activities after the hard negotiations that have been reached throughout the world. When this is done, the agreements on this council become a true transformation, backing the task of those in the parliaments or in the civil society or in the private world that want to really change their context, their policies to move towards the right to food. It is the time to work closer. The parliamentary community that you represent today still does not participate in the World Council on Food Security in a structured manner as the civil society and the private sector does. And even recently, as per invitation, the local authorities, I deem it is only appropriate to ensure that the World Council on Food Security of the United Nations and the community of parliament members tighten their bonds. And I would like to invite you to join the committee and be a part of the counseling as participants, active members, and join us in deliberating in the committee, so that this is the beginning of a long-term alliance between the UN Council on Food Security and the worldwide alliances for the right to food all over the world, for the millions of people, men, women, and children suffering of hunger, malnutrition, and rural poverty, because they count on all of us to make the necessary changes to improve their lives. Let's do everything we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. We appreciate the presence of each one of you in this ceremony, inauguration of the second summit to prevent hunger and malnutrition, and we invite you to continue with the program in the hemicycle and the chamber. We invite everyone to El Pensador area where we will have a coffee break. Thank you very much.